Anytime you're ready.
All right, my name is Victor Stanley, and this is October 16th, 2009. It was 60 years ago last July that I came to Grand Rapids. So I spent the first part of my life in Nebraska and in service, but since then that's been my home for 60 years. So the people that 60 years ago are the ones that I can remember. You know, I know people ask, why did you go to Grand Rapids? And of course that's sort of an interesting question, because it was a small town, and I had just been in the service, completed my World War II time, enlisted in drafted into the Navy for 2.5 years, and was out in '46 and went to the University of Nebraska and did get out of a bachelor's degree. But we wanted to go into business with my dad, and so we were looking for this town, and why did Grand Rapids attract us? And one of the things that I think attracted us as much as anything is that there was industry in this small town. And it was not just an agriculture town. And when you want to have a business in a small town, you're thinking about something else other than agriculture, because it's seasonal and it don't always prove quite as profitable. So that's what attracted us to Grand Rapids, and the number of places that were in business there, it was just enormous. In other words, I've made a list of them in the past, and it's unbelievable that there were that many places around the square. I don't know, when I was thinking about some of the individuals that might stand out, and I don't know whether you've ever discussed him or not, but one of the places that I remember was in business shortly after that was the Del Rio Cafe, and it was sort of a place that probably a lot of people have memories about. And the one that I think about particularly was Jim Tubbs. Jim Tubbs, I believe I have that right. Mm-hmm. And he had, of course, purchased it from the former owners, and I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think it was Irene Welburn, probably, who had it about the time we came here. Anyway, Jim had sort of floated off of a traveling tent show. He was on tent shows, and when he came to Grand Rapids, well, he liked the people in the town, and he came back and bought a cafe and ran it for a number of years, and so it continued on under that Del Rio name, and it was just sort of a place that people hung out. It was a little bitty, narrow place. If I remember right, it was only about 10 foot wide. It would have been on the north side of what is now Youngberg Drug in that area, and just a little narrow cafe. But it had a lot of memories for a lot of people. And after that, Bob Ziegler had purchased the building and had his office in that building for a number of years. And in fact, I wouldn't remember the year, but it was early on when Ed Wiegers, who's been a famous attorney now for years in Marysville, was a new attorney, and he was a county attorney, and he had used the back end of that building of Ziegler's to come down here once or twice a week as a young attorney to help him get established. So that little place was still going on. One of the things, we talked about some of the other people that were around Grand Rapids shortly after that, and so one of them that we talked about was this Dr. Robert Reineck. And we'll back up just a little bit to the place that Al Marvin had the jewelry store on the south side of the square at that time. And he was also an optometrist, but had received, was getting up there in years. And so Bob had worked there when he was in school doing jewelry work, and so after he got out of high school, he graduated young from high school, in a year or two younger than his class, went on and into optometry school, and came back here and went in the place where his former Dr. Al Marvin had the jewelry shop, and so Bob had a optometry there, and as well as a jewelry store. Well, he was still single, and I was still single, So we were friends, and we both got involved with Chamber of Commerce, and one of us was president, one of us was secretary, and those were in the early years of the early 50s. But often at times when I was talking to Bob in the evening, he said, well, you know, I saw this patient today, and I saw something there that I couldn't do anything about correcting with glasses, and it bothered him. And he just said this regularly. Well, one day when I came in, he says, I made up my mind, I'm going to medical school if I can get in. I'm going to sell this place out and go to medical school, get whatever I can out of it and go, because I want to be a doctor, an ophthalmologist, that I can cure or doctor those diseases that I've been seeing these number of years. And so that he did. Went to medical school, went to specialist, and became Dr. Robert Reineck in Harvard. And that needs to be almost another story, because he was there in Harvard and spoke in national programs throughout the United States for a number of years. So he's still alive at this time and does come back here to high school reunions occasionally. You know, when I was thinking about the various people that I had some association with and did a lot of things for Rapids, and of course I thought about Floyd Stryker particularly, and this just came up because of the fact that he was scoutmaster back when my son was a scout. And right now we are in the process of scheduling a reunion of the scouts that took a Canadian canoe trip in July of 1970. And so we have just contacted those people, and of course Floyd was the scoutmaster. And of course there were 3 adults and 12 scouts that took that trip. And the 2 other adults, Floyd Stryker and Don Roach, are both passed away, and I was the other surviving adult that went on that trip. But we're planning on having a brunch here next Memorial Day weekend, and hopefully we can get most of those people back. I knew that I had a diary that was kept on that canoe trip, and so I found it. I knew sort of it was here someplace, but I did find it. And I also have 2 cassettes of slide pictures that were taken on that canoe trip, and we hope to be able to share those with the scouts. In fact, I did share them with the Lions Club just last week. They didn't have a program, and I was surprised at the interest that they showed in those events. Oh, it was such things as the little personal things that you might write in a diary that they found entertaining. And one thing that had nothing to do with it whatsoever was they were in a little spiral notebook, a fairly good size, a standard sheet, but on the front was imprinted the price of 29 cents for a spiral notebook. Well, that was in 1970. So we know it isn't like that anymore. So, but we do look forward to an event of getting to see some of those 12 boys. All of them are still alive as far as we know, and 1 or 2 aren't in very good health, but maybe they'll be here for that. Okay. You was thinking about, I think of a little interesting situation that happened. Ori Purcell was involved in the greenhouse and nursery here at that time, and it wasn't too long after that his son Arlie and married Natalie Jenkins, and they had their wedding, and I was one of 2 or 3 that wanted to do some little bit of meanness towards their car before they were getting away. They had attempted to, they hid it in a garage, but we knew where it was, but that garage was locked. Well, Jerry Sork and I were 2 of them that were involved that managed to get that door open regardless of the lock. And Ori Purcell liked to, through a fit, he was going to charge us with breaking and entering. And but Jerry's dad was Floyd Sork, the former druggist, and he and Ori were brother Masons. And he said, let me go talk to Brother Ori and see if we can't get this worked out. Well, they did. They got it worked out, and not much damage was done, but it was the fact that we had spoiled the idea that their car wasn't going to receive some type of newlywed, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, don't even remember
Mayhem.
what we did. Yeah, so that was one of the little events that I remember happened along those early years.
Well, which reminds me of the chivalry story that you have.
Well, it was at that time. It was practice when anyone got married. They went to their place and you got your bride in a wheelbarrow and you wheeled it downtown and up to the center of the square and you ended up in the fish pond. And we were married the 30th of August in 1953, little May Augustus and I. And so we were one of them where they came to our house in a month, probably, not right away, it was a few weeks. And I wheeled her to town in a wheelbarrow and I got dunked in the fish pond like a lot of others. Mm-hmm. So it happened to me, and I don't know how long, but I see there's a picture of it that we're recalling at this time of another couple that did it. So it happened to a lot.
Did you have to have treats for the people? Did you have treats for the people when they came to your house?
Oh yes. At the actual chivalry, they went back to the house. Yes, oh yes, you had to have usually candy bars or at least something like that to pass out to everybody. That's what they came for, some type of treats. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Did you participate in putting somebody else in that pond?
Oh well, yeah. The one that we were involved in, we didn't end up putting them in the pond, but it almost was mischievously when Dorothy Harris married Bob Gallup. And Bob was a World War II veteran and had lost a leg. And so he had a peg leg, but he didn't want to be treated different than anybody else. He was still just as good a man as anybody else. So Harold Osborne, who ran the body shop, Pat's uncle, next door, and Norman Diedrich had the Gamble store. They were right on the other side of me from our store. And we were all invited to the wedding, but we thought we need to steal the bride. And so it was planned that way. And so after the wedding was over, when they were ready to leave the church, I had the camera, and I was going to take a picture of them. And so as they came out, we wanted to get a picture of the bride alone. And well, that was the signal for Diedrich and Harold to grab a hold of Dorothy and force her in the car that was sitting close by. And here poor Bob trying to prevent it. And he was a little disadvantaged, but he didn't want to be, and so we didn't treat him that way. And so we got her in the car, and there was the three of us in the car, and her, and leaving Bob behind. Well, he grabbed in his car and was going to chase us, and forgot the guy's name now. Well, I don't remember his name right now. I'd think of it later. He worked at a drugstore in Marysville, and Connie Heralick's dad, what would his name be? Can you tell me that?
Banneker.
Harry Banneker. Told Bob, I'll get in with you and go. Well, what he did is reached in and got his keys and pulled his keys out to give us a head start. Anyway, he finally got her back, even though there was a little bit of a tear in her wedding gown. Other than that, she got back safe and sound.
Didn't you take her to Home City and leave her on the streets and drive away from her?
We tried to, but she didn't get out of the car. She was not going to get left in Home City. That's what we planned to do, and where we were, and where Bob finally got there and picked her up there. But No, we were intending on leaving her there, but she didn't want to get out, so she didn't. Anyway, but that's
Those are fun.
And thank you so much, because I was absolutely terrified at my wedding because I was afraid it was going to happen to me, and I don't know if I would have had the aplomb that Dorothy had and been able to keep my cool, or if I'd have been a mess of tears. So, but I worried about that because I'd heard that story.
You know, one of the fellows that I sort of jotted down here, and I just know you've got some things about Bill Davis, the marshal. But he was a marshal here for a number of years, and very faithfully went around the square, and I'm talking about all the businesses that were there, and shut the front and back doors after the places were closed for the night. Walking, not riding, but he walked that. And of course he did have a car. It wasn't a police car, it was his own car. And I think I told this story before, but two of the boys that I had working for me in our store were Leon Borick and Ralph Arnott. And at that time, Leon had a farm permit, which allowed them to be able to drive like in the daytime, but not after dark. Well, both of them were scheduled to work after dark. It was a Saturday night. And Leon knew that he wasn't supposed to drive home, but he was planning on it anyway, and just driving from their home, you know. And he had his car in town, their car. And so they looked out, and of course, Bill Davis was sitting in his car over by the bank. So the boys had plotted a little plan. I said, well, I'll take Leon home. No, we'll take care of it. They told me they'd take care of it. And so they went out and got the car, but Ralph got behind the wheel because he already had his driver's license. And they started north of town, and Bill stopped them. And of course, he saw that Ralph was driving, and he knew that it was 16, and so he said, you boys, anything wrong? You everything all right tonight? Something to that effect. Oh yeah. He said, well, just be careful and go on home. Have a good